Kabir had been preparing for his boardroom pitch for 3 straight weeks. He knew the material perfectly, but right before he grabbed the handle to walk in, a single drop of tea landed squarely in the center of his crisp white shirt. It was barely a 2-centimeter stain, but to Kabir it was a glowing neon sign. As he stood in front of his clients, that tiny speck consumed his attention. He stumbled over his practiced words, keeping his presentation folder awkwardly high against his chest to block their view. He left the room defeated, entirely convinced that looking unprofessional cost him a massive contract. Kabir's isolated panic is a near-universal human experience. Whether it's a minor speech stumble, a bad hair day, or a coffee spill, we walk through the world feeling like an invisible, highly judgmental spotlight is tracking our every flaw. Psychologists have a specific term for this feeling. It is called the spotlight effect. The root cause of this illusion is something known as egocentric bias. Biologically, we are trapped behind our own eyes, making it incredibly difficult to step outside of our own personal perspective. Because we are constantly monitoring our own thoughts, we experience a cognitive glitch. We project our intense internal anxieties onto the people around us. We are acutely aware of our own panic, but we forget that an outside observer can only see our external shell, not the alarms ringing inside our head. By looking at ourselves so closely, our sense of reality distorts. We drastically overestimate how much social scrutiny we actually face on a daily basis. In 1999, psychologist Thomas Gilovich designed an experiment to test exactly how warped our social perception truly is. He gave a group of college students a highly uncomfortable task. He forced them to walk into a crowded classroom wearing a t-shirt specifically chosen to be deeply uncool. To maximize the embarrassment, the shirt featured a massive portrait of the musician Barry Manilow. This chart shows how the panicking students predicted the room would react. They were certain at least 50% of peers would identify the face on the shirt, but the reality was entirely different. Less than 25% actually registered the shirt's existence. Our brains are mathematically doubling the amount of judgment we think we are receiving from the outside world. To see how this plays out in the real world, let's reset the timeline and look at Kabir's pitch later that evening from the perspective of his client. They cross paths by the elevator. Kabir, still obsessing over the stain, blurts out an apology for his messy appearance. The client stares back in total confusion. He had absolutely zero awareness of the tea stain during the entire pitch. The client missed the stain entirely because he was consumed by his own internal anxiety, terrified that his presentation notes weren't clear enough. We assume we are supporting characters in everyone else's story, constantly being evaluated. The irony is that they are far too busy being the protagonists of their own lives to even notice our flaws. Realizing that everyone around you is distracted by their own invisible coffee stains turns this psychological burden into a deeply liberating truth. The first step to breaking the illusion is catching the egocentric bias in the moment. You have to consciously remind yourself to separate your intense internal feelings from the physical, external reality. Next, apply the 1-week rule. Force yourself to ask, will a single person realistically remember this specific mistake 7 days from now? If the answer is no, the spotlight isn't real. Finally, use physical grounding. The next time you feel that wave of self-consciousness, direct your focus outward. Take out specific items in the room to observe, pulling your brain out of its self-obsessed loop. The spotlight is a fabrication of your own mind. Turning it off finally gives you the permission to mess up, wear the wrong thing, and just be human.